Ciao, I'm Kate Portanova, your host, Italy Experience Guide, and lifelong lover of all things Florence. This podcast is your ticket to discovering the authentic side of Florence in Italy, one story, one dish, and one piazza at a time. Whether you're dreaming of sipping espresso in a bustling cafe, wandering cobblestone streets filled with history, or connecting with locals to experience La Vera Italia, you're in the right place. Join me as I share my journey of living, breathing, and embracing Florence's beauty, culture, and charm. Along the way, we'll explore slow travel, cultural immersion, and the simple joys of Italian life, with plenty of insider tips and heartfelt stories to inspire your next adventure. So grab your cappuccino, before noon, of course, and let's dive into the magic of Florence together.
Ciao, I'm back for today. I'd like to talk about my favorite piazzas in Florence and why I like those piazzas. The first one I'm going to start with is my favorite, absolute favorite, is Piazza della Signoria. And this piazza is dear to my heart because I had friends that used to own one of the restaurants in that piazza, the pub, the only pub that's in that piazza, which is next door. It's called Michael Collins Pub, and now the restaurant is owned by the Frescobaldi conglomerate. It's a different restaurant, but this piazza has a lot of history to it too. So Palazzo Vecchio is in this piazza, which is the city hall of Florence. And when the Medici roamed this city, that was where they conducted business. It was once their house, and then they moved over to Palazzo Pitti. There's also a plaque in the middle of this piazza where Savonarola, who was a friar, he went against the Medici and they burned him at the stake. So there is a plaque in the middle of that piazza that shows exactly where he was burned. Yeah, it's just a beautiful piazza. It gets really crowded during the summer. There's the beautiful Neptune fountain right next to Palazzo Vecchio. But yeah, and it's attached to the Uffizi, the beautiful gallery of art and culture. So that is my number one favorite piazza. I will never not love that piazza. When I walk into it, it just takes my breath away. The second piazza, I will say, is one of my favorites as well, is Piazza Santa Croce. And that is another one that has a lot of history to it. The famous Calcio Storico is played in that piazza every year. So they bring in a bunch of sand, they bring in bleachers, and it's a spectacle for sure. If you're there in June, end of June, that's a crazy time. You will never see the church when you walk into that piazza until you get to it. The beautiful Santa Croce Church is something to see and something to visit. A lot of beautiful works of art and tombs of famous people, famous artists, famous just Florentines that are in Santa Croce Church. And little known fact is my father-in-law actually lived off of that piazza. So it's another special place to my heart. Before I knew that, I did love that piazza and the beautiful church that stands in it. My next piazza, I will say, is Piazza Santo Spirito, and that's on the other side of the river. Not a lot of people go to the other side of the river. As I found out with my guests last September, we went to Florence one day, and they were there. They stayed in Florence before they came to the villa, and they told me that, oh gosh, we only went to one side of the river. We never went to the other. So the day we were there as a group, they actually chose to go to the other side of the river, the Altorano, which is basically other side of the Arno. Yeah, so it's a completely different vibe over there. And Piazza Santo Spirito is known for its young folk that hang out there. There are a few restaurants and bars. And during the summer, when I lived there, it was where all the cool people, the hippie people of Florence, like hung out, smoked, drank, and just congregated. Another thing that's really beautiful about that piazza is I feel like almost every day, but I'm not going to tell you a day, but if you are staying near Santo Spirito, that piazza has a lot of open air markets during the day, like with fruit, vegetables, and they also have antique markets, a bunch of different types of markets. So if you're ever walking past there, stop in and see if there's a whole like market going on. It's a really cool people watching opportunity for you as well. Yeah, it brings me back memories. I had friends that lived off of Piazza Santo Spirito. We would always meet there before we went to dinner or went for a walk. Yeah, there's a lot of history in that church as well, but I won't get into that. I can't do it. I'm going to just keep sticking to why I love the piazza. All right. the next one, torn between two, but I'm gonna say Sant'Ambrogio. Now, Sant'Ambrogio has a market as well, like Mercato Centrale, but the Piazza Sant'Ambrogio, which is where the church is very small. Another hip young people congregate there. There's bars, there's restaurants around there. Another part of the city that just has a different personality. There's shops along Via Pietrapiana. I just love walking through there. It's just usually on a Friday, Saturday night, it's very, very crowded, so I don't really like crowds anymore, but when I was younger, that was a place where we would hang out because there's just so many establishments and locales there to drink, to eat, and everything. But mostly the culture of it all. Really cool. I'm going to say the next one. I'm going to say Piazza San Marco. Only reason why is because it is a hub for all the buses. And I was taking the bus all the time when I was living in Florence. And Piazza San Marco is kind of like a hug because I knew I could get anywhere in the city from Piazza San Marco, from going up to Fiesole on the hill where I studied, to going to Bagno Ripoli, to going to my school in Campo di Marte. There is history to it because there's the church of San Marco right there. That's where Savonarola, the person I told you about in Piazza Nidia that got burned at the stake, that's where he lived as a friar or a monk. But yeah, there's nothing beautiful about San Marco, but if you are taking buses while you're in Florence, you're probably passing through Piazza San Marco. So it's my favorite one because of that. And I'll just say, I don't know how many. I didn't have in mind how many I was going to tell you how many I like. I'm going to say Piazzale Michelangelo. Now that was one that I talk about a lot on this podcast because it's an overlook. You can look over the whole city. It's perfect pictures to take from there. You can see the hills, the northern side of Florence and Tuscany from this spot. A lot of concerts are taking place at Piazzale Michelangelo because it's just a big parking lot that turned into basically a concert hall. There's a lot of paths that lead to Piazzale Michelangelo from San Niccolò, the neighborhood in San Niccolò. There's some clubs nearby. There's a restaurant off of Piazzale Michelangelo. There's a gelateria there. So in the summer, it's really nice walking up there. You're hot, go get a gelato. And from there, there's the church on even higher hill is San Miniato, which is another, I'll tell that story another time. Yeah, Piazzale is something that I always tell people to go to, even if it's a hike. You could also get there by bus. I believe it's bus number 13 or 12. I know it's either 13 or 12. I'm pretty sure it's 13. See, I still remember all the buses. Yeah. And then I'm going to say Porta Romana, even though it's a piazza, but it's also a roundabout. And I say that just because there's a statue in the middle of Porta Romana that has a story, and I'm going to remember it next time. I don't remember it right now, but I'm going to remember it next time. Actually, I'm going to pause this and I'm going to find it. Okay. So the meaning of the statue that's in Porta Romana is there's two women. There's one woman standing looking towards Piacenese, and then the other woman is perpendicular on top of the other woman on her head, looking towards Porta Via Romana. And the idea that the artist had for this is symbolizing the fact that, look, opening yourself towards the world. So the exit from Porta Romana as the woman is looking down Via Senese, and then the recognition of the past and what has happened in the past. So I've always was interested in this statue because I just was curious on why. I didn't actually, when I looked this up right now, I had no idea it was two women. I thought it was a boulder on top of her head. But also Porta Romana, the piazza where the roundabout is talking about the doors of the city. And there's only a few places around Florence that still have the doors. Obviously, they never close because there's traffic going through, but I just think it's a really cool piazza to see. How the original walls were, because you can feel not a lot of the wall is still exists in Florence. So Porta Romana means it's the door looking to Rome. Also, that's why you see her looking towards Rome. But yeah, anyway, I thought it was going to be a more interesting story. Sorry, that wasn't as interesting as I thought for the statue. But yeah. And Porta Romana also has a place in my heart because when I was first a nanny in 2007, the grandparents of the girls lived off of Porta Romana up in this beautiful area up in the hills. So I always liked Porta Romana for that reason too, because it just reminded me of that time. And I think that is all the piazzas I'm going to talk about today. I have others. I wanted to talk about next time my favorite streets in Florence, which I just have favorite streets. I'm not going to tell you why. Well, I will tell you why, but not right now. But okay, this was my episode on my favorite piazzas and why I love them and why you should too and why you should pass through them on your next trip to Florence. Allora, buongiorno, buonasera, buonanotte, wherever you are, and have a lovely day. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Thank you for joining me on this journey through the heart of Florence and beyond. I hope today's episode has inspired you to slow down, embrace authentic travel, and connect with the beauty of Italian culture. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the magic of Florence and me with your fellow travelers. Until next time, remember, the best way to travel is slowly. Ciao for now. See you in the next episode.